Alright, I guess if school's starting this week, I better get a haircut. Yeah, that looks really good. So, again, Novo in Castle Rock. And actually had a really fun time with Liz. So, she was a marching band kid and drum major, so we connected on all sorts of levels. So, really good. Hopefully this summer has been kind of an off summer to let everything rest and things will come back next year. My columbines did really good at the beginning of the year, and after that hailstorm they never quite recovered to the level that I'd hoped. I do have a couple of flowers on my tomatoes, so maybe I'll get some Roma tomatoes by the end of the season. Raspberries, I really don't think anything's gonna happen there. So, again, maybe it's an off year for me. Trying to replant my tree. My stem is still very green, but the leaves definitely didn't make it, so we'll see if a root system came out of that at all. The leaves on the little one are definitely much bigger than they've been in the last couple weeks, so hopefully something's re-rooting. I guess we'll see what happens really in the spring.
Well, this week I read While You Were Dreaming by Alisha, and it was really intriguing. It was about a young woman who is trying to stay under the radar because her mom was recently deported and her sister is not a U.S. citizen, but she is. And her sister has graduated from high school and is taking care of her so she can continue on in school. So she's trying to stay under the radar, and one afternoon or evening after work, she puts on a costume because there's like a cosplay bookstore type of thing that's going on, and she starts heading down the alley. She sees the boy that's her big crush fall into the canal, and she rushes to save him and pulls him out, but then has to run away. She can't take the attention because she doesn't want anybody looking at her family. It was just a really interesting story with kind of the anxiety and pressures of somebody in a hard situation like that. I hadn't read anything like it before, and yet it was also YA, where she's trying to figure out what is important to her, and is this guy the one for her, and she ends up, it just ends up being a really neat story and one that I enjoyed a lot, so I would definitely recommend.
A summer of leaks. We had a leaky basement, a leaky garbage disposal, and finally a leaky fish tank. We actually didn't lose that much water from the tank. We used it to fill a smaller aquarium so we could rescue the fish. And thus ends July. Here's a quick 31-second summary of 1 second every day. August 1st is Colorado Day, this year being the 148th birthday of our favorite state. Melissa made a peach pie with peaches from Palisade, Colorado that she'd set aside in the freezer last summer when they were still in season, especially proud of the little CO cut into the upper crust. And then we were off to Idaho Springs for our favorite Colorado mountain pie and our spice and tea exchange iced teas.
Happy Colorado Day!
August 2nd, I found myself back at school, greeted by a full IHOP breakfast, which was really nice. But also, the first day was pretty much 100% time to work in the classrooms, which I don't think has ever happened in the 25 years of being there. Sadly, my room was exactly as I'd left it, and I didn't get the carpet that I'd been hoping for at the end of the school year. So, the extra effort that I'd made to move much of my stuff into my office went unrewarded. For lunch, the math department headed over to Mount Fuji. When you show up with 10 people, the only place they can seat you is the hibachi station. One focus for my first day was to print a fresh background for the activities board that I have in the hallway next to my classroom. So I finished my third book of the summer, and that was Fumbling the Future, and it's by Douglas Smith and Robert Alexander. If you didn't know, Xerox was the company that came up with the graphical user interface and all the stuff that we're used to of having computers with icons and a mouse and bitmap technology, all of that stuff that is kind of the modern computer, not the black screen with the white writing. All of that was the old kind of computer, and then Xerox came up with the idea of this whole graphical user interface. Well, this story is about Xerox and basically all of the issues that they had with management throughout the late 70s and early 80s that made it so that the company really didn't acknowledge the computer technology that they had. Obviously it's Xerox, so it's a paper company, a copier company, and they were really focusing on that, but they knew that they needed to get into technology, and so they hired some of the greatest minds that have ever existed in computer science, and they came up with fantastic devices. The book goes into kind of why that information didn't get passed on to manufacturing. Would have been a really good idea to pass that on to manufacturing and change the world themselves. Instead, they kind of accidentally gave a tour to a guy named Steve Jobs, and Steve Jobs was flabbergasted why Xerox wasn't doing anything about this invention. And so that's kind of the story in a nutshell. As far as reading the book, not a very easy book to read, and I would probably fault the editor more than the authors. I think the authors were presenting good information. They really kind of conveyed the story, maybe more than just the important points, but really getting into some of the nitty-gritty details. And I think a good editor would have caught a lot of that. There were even chapters that talked about the star system and how the star system kind of failed, and I'm like, have we talked about a system called star? I don't remember that. And then the next chapter was about the star system. And so not a really well edited book. So, you know, when you're reading it, you might want to have out a sheet of notebook paper to write down all the different names, kind of along Lord of the Rings with how many names you come across, hundreds, and it's very difficult to figure out which names are important until you're about halfway through the book. And then, of course, halfway through the book, they introduce a whole set of new people. And so, not an easy read, but a fun story, a great story of how Xerox created the future and then dumped it. So, Fumbling the Future. Back to the aquarium story, I finally got the old aquarium drained and moved all the major components to the new aquarium. Just waiting to get some taller vertical pipes to connect the under gravel filter pumps, and then I can transfer the fish. And probably transferred the fish a little too soon. Should have let the filter have a little bit more time to clean out the floaters. I think all that's left is getting some new suction cups for the bubbler pipe on the side of the tank. The old ones are just worn out. Other than that, I think it looks like it'll be a really good tank.
Yesterday I finished Garden of the Cursed by Katy Rose Poole. My book club had read it and I wasn't there for it. I was out of town, so I decided to put it on my list. Several people said it was worth the read, and I definitely enjoyed it. This young woman was kind of on the edges of the elite. Some of the storylines seemed a bit familiar. But her mother disappears and she ends up out in the marshes where kind of the regular folks live. So she has connections to both the kind of the upper crust and also just the normal folks, and she has become a curse breaker. So she's doing a lot of investigating. There's kind of a mystery aspect to it, and also she ends up trying to help somebody from the upper crust who she had considered a friend, and now she wasn't sure just where the two of them stood. And this guy is somebody that she kind of had a crush on, but also, just thought that they were friends. So it has a neat magic system that kind of has to do with people using cards to do magic as opposed to having magic part of who they are per se. And it's a lot of I don't know, it was interesting how she went back and forth between these two worlds that she had never really been a part of either really fully. And I got to the end, and the cliffhanger was enough that I went on my day off back to the library to go get the second book. So it was definitely engaging, and I'm reading the second one now. You'll hear about it next week. And so I would recommend Garden of the Cursed.